music, isn't that right?
Yep.
Well, you don't talk much. You surely don't talk much, huh?
Nope.
Gee, how do you do that? I have no idea how you do it. I don't think I'll ever be able to...
It's what we don't say that counts. More music, less bull. K102 FM.
WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Serving and informing the Twin Cities for 4 decades. This is WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now, Don Shelby, Pat Miles, Bud Kraling, and Ralph John Fritz bring you Channel 4's 5 p.m. report.
We all decided to try and reach the United States Embassy. And once there, we found it surrounded by Vietnamese looking for a way in and a way out. We had to push and shove our way through a crowd of several hundred Vietnamese trying to scale the walls, only to be knocked back by U.S. Marines.
The voice of CBS correspondent Ed Bradley, 10 years ago today, describing the fall of Saigon. These scenes are familiar to a nation of stunned viewers who watched on television as America cut its losses and fled South Vietnam in its first major military defeat. For America today, it's been a time to look back and to share private memories of those troubled times. In Vietnam itself, there's celebration. Soldiers and civilians alike marched today. Jet fighters flew overhead, marking this 10th anniversary of the communist victory. Hundreds of Western journalists have been allowed in for the first time since the war to cover the event. Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Moore here. Don Shelby and Pat Miles are on another assignment. Thousands of Vietnamese people fled Saigon 10 years ago today. And a bit later on the 5 p.m. report, we shall hear from one of them. He runs a Twin Cities restaurant, and Marcia Floor will have his story. For that, let's find out what has happened in this all-important fight. Why is this draft? Why are we making such a big deal about this Vikings draft?
Well, I think a lot of folks want to know exactly if the Vikings are going to get on track after losing Keith Millard last year and having trouble with Doug Martins and Darren Nelsons and people not wanting to play in Minnesota. And, of course, Bill Fralick of Pittsburgh. That's who the Vikings said they were going to draft. They didn't draft him number 1 today. They swapped with Atlanta, and we'll tell you a bit about that. Very few household names in this draft today. It all began at 7 o'clock this morning with the Metrodome in Minneapolis serving as the Viking headquarters. Hundreds of hardcore Viking fans were on hand to get first-hand information of who went where in the draft. Well, it didn't take long before the Vikings dealt their first pick. Bill Fralick, a tackle from Pittsburgh, had said he wouldn't play in Minnesota, so the Vikings dealt with Atlanta. Well, the Falcons took Fralick, and then on the next pick, on the first round, the Vikings had swapped with Atlanta for that third-round pick to boot. Minnesota took Chris Dolman, a 6'6" linebacker from the University of Pittsburgh. Dolman was a 4-year letterman and at times a dominant force for Pittsburgh. He was compared by his college coach to the abilities of another Pittsburgh defensive standout, former Steeler linebacker L.C. Greenwood. Dolman, as a linebacker, was the team's third leading tackler this season, 65 tackles. So Chris Dolman from Pittsburgh is the Vikings' top NFL draft pick today. And let's take a look at the rest of the Minnesota picks to date, plus a few others. On the second round, it was Isaac Holt, the defensive back out of Alcorn State. Has had knee problems. Otherwise, they think he might have gone in the first round. Round 3, Kirk Loudermilk, a center out of Ohio, has a lot of potential, but rated a little bit on the slow side. Tim Meambra is a linebacker out of Washington, rated a tough cookie, and they say he will play when he's hurt. Could be another Scott Stedwell in the making. Also in round 3, and the Vikings had 3 third-round picks. Tim Long, an offensive tackle out of Memphis State. Then on the 4th round, Buster Rhymes, a wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Kyle Morrell, a defensive back out of Brigham Young. In round 5, Mark McDonald, offensive guard from Boston College. Other picks in the first round. The first round, of course, went to Buffalo. That was some time ago. Bruce Smith took a defensive end from Virginia Tech. Stacy Robinson out of St. Paul Central High School, picked on the second round by the New York Giants. And he scored 8 touchdowns, and he goes to the Giants. We'll have more plus interviews at 6 o'clock.
Not a running back in the lot so far.
Well, there wasn't a quarterback in the first round for the second straight year either.
Thanks, Ralph. The proposals to lure a new General Motors Saturn plant to Minnesota passed their first road test today, to coin a phrase. The Senate Tax Committee this morning approved the measures on the condition that the incentive package offered by the state expires should GM choose a site in another state. Pat Kessler explains.
Perpich administration officials call it the economic catch of the decade. And to snare the $3.5 billion plant, the state is casting a $1.2 billion net of incentives.
We're talking about the second largest corporation in America,
We're talking about one which is extremely strong financially. And as I say, there's no guarantee, there never is in the business world, but if you had to place your bet on any one corporation and its ability to sustain 20,000 jobs for a state, frankly, I'd put my bet on this one.
The Saturn package includes what is known as a tax-free environment. For the next 30 years, GM would pay no sales, property, or corporate taxes. The state would give GM the land for a factory and would pay relocation expenses for many employees. Lawmakers today approved the package with little opposition, but with some barely concealed skepticism.
Then all of these offers that the various states are making, there isn't really going to be any new investment. All of this is just, no matter who gets it, it's a windfall to General Motors.
But legislative opposition was muted in part because of a gentle warning from the chairman that GM is listening.
The things we say in the public debate on this bill are closely followed by the decision makers on the location for this plant.
The legislative package must still be approved by the full House and Senate. GM, meanwhile, says it won't make a decision on a site until summer. Pat Kessler, WCCO Television News.
One or two other items from the state capitol this afternoon. The House Appropriations Committee has been meeting for the last 7 hours and a few moments ago passed a bill to freeze state welfare spending at $2.4 billion. A major feature of that bill would remove able-bodied people from state welfare rolls, which the DFLers say will force 24,000 so-called, what they call employables, onto the street. Tonight, the Senate is expected to begin debating a bill raising Minnesota's drinking age from 19 to 21. We have good and bad news on the national economy this afternoon. The bad news is that the government's index of leading economic indicators dropped in March, down 0.2%. The new figures from the Commerce Department surprised analysts who had expected a bigger turnaround in the economy. On the other hand, America's merchandise trade deficit shrank a bit last month from 11.4 to a straight $11 billion. Tonight is the night President Reagan leaves for his European tour with stops in West Germany, Spain, France, Portugal. Of course, the Bitburg Cemetery in West Germany, the most publicized stop on the agenda. Mr. Reagan has vowed not to change his plans. He did, however, lend an ear to his Secretary of State, George Shultz, on the matter of U.S. policies in Nicaragua. Secretary Shultz, reportedly, is recommending that the U.S. impose a trade embargo and suspend airline service to Nicaragua. The White House is reviewing American policy toward that country now that the House has rejected any aid for the Nicaraguan rebels. When the Tuesday Five continues, we'll hear from a Vietnam refugee on his life in America, 10 years after the fall of Saigon. It is now 7.5 minutes after 5 o'clock.
The watch to watch is Loris. Fashionable, dependable Loris. It's everything except expensive.
You know, I went looking for a VCR and I found a new store. Well, not a new store, but sure new to me. Montgomery Ward. Well, I saw Panasonic, GE, Sony, Sanyo, a killer selection. And that was just the VCRs. Well, the TVs covered an entire wall. I mean, an entire wall. You know, for my dough, Montgomery Ward is serious about electronics.
What happens when you combine the best of white bread with the best of wheat bread? You get a whole new kind of bread called autumn grain from Tasty.
I love autumn grain because it's so soft and tastes so good.
I love autumn grain because it's the light, wholesome, nutritious wheat bread made with 8 natural grains.
The best of white bread and the best of wheat bread. We put them all together in autumn grain.
It's the bread the whole family will love.
From Tasty.
And look at this iWorks ad. Now, for a limited time only, every frame $50 and under, 50% off. All other frames, $20 off. Wow.
It's all right here at the iWorks, the superstore of eyewear. From our 21-step eye exam that's so complete, we even take your blood pressure, to the service in just hours from our in-store labs, even for bifocals. The iWorks has it all. The iWorks. It's eye care as you've never seen it before.
And we're going to the iWorks.
Are achingly familiar. They are an indelible part of our history. On the day that Saigon fell to the communists, More than 100,000 Vietnamese fled their homeland. Some were airlifted out. Those are the pictures in our history. Others became boat people. A member of those refugees, as you know, now live in Minnesota, including the family about whom Marcia Floor is going to tell us. Marcia?
Well, Dave, as you well know, Vietnamese nationals, especially those who worked for the American Embassy, were in real danger when the North Vietnamese swept into Saigon 10 years ago today. Nguyen, owner of the Saigon restaurant in St. Louis Park, was a U.S. Defense contract auditor at the time of surrender. Years earlier, his name had been put on a North Vietnamese blacklist as a collaborator. 6 days before the fall of Saigon, Nguyen was flown out of Vietnam with his wife and 8 of his 9 children. He was told by Americans he would come back in a few months from Thailand. Instead, the family was diverted to the Philippines. That's where they were 10 years ago today. They got word of the surrender and knew that they would never go home again. Less than a month later, the Nguyens joined their eldest daughter in Minnesota, where she was going to school. The Saigon restaurant in St. Louis Park is now their living.
I worry, do they remember the Vietnamese language? Few of our children, they speak Vietnamese language very, very clumsy.
Actually, Dave, what Mr. Nguyen is worried about is that the culture will be stripped from the children, and part of that culture is that children take care of their parents. Now, Nguyen is now 56 years old. He sees what happens in America, that families are what he calls cold, although some of us would argue with that. And he is afraid that he and his wife are going to be put in a nursing home and die alone. He said when he was a young man, his father said, "I'm retiring now. You are the oldest son. You will take care of me." He said it was not a request, it was an order.
How has he felt about the social adjustments the children have had to make in this new environment?
The social adjustments have been fine. Perhaps they're a bit too Americanized for him. He is not ungrateful to America. Nguyen loves America, and he said this is the best place for children, but he said if there's ever a chance to go back to Vietnam, that's where he wants to die.
Children do adapt much quicker than the rest
Certainly.
of us. Thank you, Marcia. The National Transportation and Safety Board is finally releasing its report on last June's fatal train crash in Motley, Minnesota. You'll recall 3 people died when 2 Burlington Northern trains collided head-on. Jim Gately sat in on the board's hearings today. He has the details from our Washington newsroom. Jim?
David, the 2 Burlington Northern trains collided because a company dispatcher had put them on the same track, going in the opposite direction. Today, the Safety Board cited that individual, but also blamed the railroad's training program. The accident was a head-on collision. 2 coal trains, 1 full, 1 empty, both traveling at full speed, approximately 40+ miles per hour. 3 people died. The investigation found no traces of drugs or alcohol in their blood. Today, the Safety Board cited that dispatcher and the company policies that allowed him to be on the job.
The board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the Burlington Northern Railroad's selection of an inexperienced individual for the safety-critical position of train dispatcher and its failure to train and supervise properly this individual, resulting in that dispatcher issuing a train order which allowed opposing freight trains to collide head-on.
Board member Patricia Goldman added the dispatcher never should have been on the job. That individual was fired after the company's investigation of the accident. The board also criticized the railroad's final training exam for dispatchers.
This test is not very relevant to what to their doing their job.
The Safety Board recommended that Burlington Northern establish better screening and training procedures for potential dispatchers. In addition, that the railroad continue more direct supervision of anyone working in what is called a safety-critical position. A spokesman for Burlington Northern claimed that the company has already adopted most of what the board recommended. And David, one of the interesting parts of today's hearing was an investigator for the Safety Board who interviewed the dispatcher said that person had no basic understanding of what he was doing, that he did not understand the mechanics of the system. Burlington Northern spokesman denied that. David?
Thank you, Jim. The man who has headed the FBI in Minnesota and the Dakotas over the past 4.5 years stepped down today. Dick Blay is retiring after 22 years with the Bureau overall. Mr. Blay oversaw investigations, among other things, into the kidnapping of Ann Walker of Rochester and the shooting of 2 federal marshals by tax protester Gordon Cole. Blay is moving to Seattle to head the security division of the Boeing Corporation. Minneapolis residents turn out to fight a high-rise at Lake Calhoun. That story coming up when the Tuesday 5 resumes. It is now 15 minutes after 5 o'clock.
Seven years ago, I had colon rectal cancer, the #2 cancer killer of men and women.
Luckily, my doctor caught it in time. Now you can test yourself at home with Early Detector. It spots an early hidden symptom as reliably as the leading test hospitals use. It's private and it's easy to do. You can't see this early symptom of colorectal cancer, but Early Detector can.
Read brochure and follow directions. See your doctor regularly.
It could save your life.
Sure, I've traveled in space. Even wrote a book about it. But when I really want to get away from it all, I count on this book. I know my way around up there, but when it came to traveling down here, I was lost. So I turned to the Yellow Pages. I found a travel agent who gave me all the guidance I needed. Take it from a guy who's been around. No matter what you need in this world, count on the Yellow Pages. It's got the right stuff.
The Northwestern Bell Yellow Pages, published by U.S. West Direct.
I like this one better.
Why?
It has a better beer flavor and taste.
Joan Curvin just picked Blatz Light over her regular Miller Light.
I don't believe it. Wow, okay.
What happened, Joan?
Blatz Light's better, and it tastes like a full-bodied beer. It doesn't taste like a light beer.
What would you tell people?
I tell them to try it. Just try it and see how you like it.
Taste test Blatz Light yourself. Compare the quality, compare the price. And if you're a regular beer drinker, try Blatz Regular.
On this last day of Abril, we are checking with Captain Dale to see who's going to be late for dinner tonight. Dale?
All right, Dave. Well, good afternoon to you and everyone. Right now we're looking at some people that are going to be a little late. This is 94 near downtown Minneapolis. You saw the Mississippi River go through there. Westbound 94 here, David. 2 cars and a semi over comparing licenses and insurance companies. I'm sure, obviously, a minor accident. Fortunately, no injuries, but creating some problems. Also, the southbound 35W at 46th Street. An accident just reported out there. No word on injuries yet on that. A stall westbound crosstown at Nicollet, so it's going to slow things down out there. Also 494 out in the Woodbury area. Back up out there due to that construction, Dave. So there's some slow areas right now. We'll keep an eye on things. Get back to you just a little bit later. Right now, I'm kind of anxious to see what Bud has for weather. We're noticing some showers around the metro area.
I'm anxious to find out, too. We were expecting showers this afternoon, weren't we?
Well, some areas got some real heavy rain. Officially at the airport station, just a trace of precipitation this afternoon. But we're forecasting showers and possible thunderstorms tonight. The pollen count is relatively high again today. A couple of days ago, we were birch and ash pollen, but today it's oak pollen. We have 507 grains per cubic meter of air, and 81% of that is oak pollen.
Are those figures uncustomarily high? Or?
Well, that's moderately high now, and early in the season, too. I'd never been bothered by pollen before until this year.
It gets all of us.
My first year. The sky is cloudy in the Twin Cities. We're at 67 degrees. We had dropped off quickly from that 75 high that we had earlier today. Humidity 63%. The wind is from the north now, 23, gusting to 30 miles an hour. Pretty good cold front moved through, and the pressure reading is 30 inches even, pressure is steady. Officially cloudy, 67 degrees at the airport station. We've got some showers and pretty heavy thunderstorms all the way from Redwood Falls, well, right along the river to Mankato, and the part of the metro area into west central Wisconsin. Looks like a little heavier rain in southeastern Pierce County. We've had some very heavy rains at Fairfax, just on the other side of Redwood Falls, and at Elmwood, Minnesota, west of Eau Claire. And we have a chance of showers and thunderstorms in the metro area until about midnight tonight, and a sunny day forecast for tomorrow. We're kind of the northern edge of a large rain pattern from northeastern Texas over to Alabama, up through Illinois and the southern part of Minnesota. In fact, there's a tornado watch until 8 o'clock this evening for part of the lower Mississippi Valley, and then until 10 o'clock as you get up to the southern part of Illinois. Heavy rains at Hill City, Kansas, and at Grand Island, Nebraska through the afternoon. And dry in the northeast. Philadelphia has had just a half inch of rain this entire month. Breaking records are set at 1847. Philadelphia, too, this afternoon was at 82 degrees in the 80s all the way down through Memphis and Orlando. On the other side of that cold front, Houghton, Michigan was 49 degrees, 80 at Boise for the afternoon. And the hot spot, Palm Springs, California, temperatures were at 96 degrees. Our forecast tonight in the metro areas for scattered showers, thunderstorms, ending shortly after midnight. Will be around 50 tonight. Winds northeast. Sunny and 70 for tomorrow. Northeast winds at 10 to 20. And then on Thursday, clear to partly cloudy, but we've a chance of afternoon showers, and the temperature then Thursday at 75. So we've got a sunny day for tomorrow. Good. Grass will continue to grow.
Nice to see you again. I was thinking while you were doing that, some guy checks into his hotel. He hasn't been in here in 20 years, and he said, geez, I saw those two guys together 20 years ago.
This is
How long can
deja
they go?
vu of some kind.
Heaven's sake, the only time we see each other is on the air.
Right here.
How's Nan? How the kids?
Oh, they're fine. How are you doing?
All right. I'll see you at 6. No, you're through at 6.
No, I'll be through.
Well, maybe I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Nice work. Minneapolis City Council Committee is meeting at this hour to decide whether to grant a permit to the developer who wants to build a high-rise on the east side of Lake Calhoun. The developer wants to buy property owned by the VFW Club. The residents in the neighborhood told the Zoning and Planning Committee that the 20-story condominium complex would obstruct views of the city lakes. Once the panel acts on the permit, it will go to the full council, perhaps next month. Stay tuned now as the Tuesday 5 continues, and we'll continue our coverage of Project Mental Health.
Lost 8 pounds.
Lose 8 more.
8.
Everybody's got a diet right. It doesn't matter who you are. It's gonna be a tough fight.
Diet right, salt-free. I'm avoiding salt and sodium.
Lee, I'm impressed.
She's impressed.
Everybody's got a diet.
Diet Right, the only leading diet cola with no salt and 100% NutraSweet.
You wanted peace of mind, so you bought health insurance. But it left you with unpaid bills, deductibles, co-payments. Well, now there's a better kind of health coverage for people who buy their own, the Share Personal Plan. Unlike ordinary insurance, Share pays almost all your medical bills in full. It's already saved some people $500 a year. Call about the Share Personal Plan. It could pay your medical bills and help you sleep better, too.
And wherever in the world I may be, you keep calling me. It's a feeling. And no matter where I've been, where I go, you keep calling me home. Chicago, your open arms, your simple charms, your people, I found no other place. Calling me home, Chicago, calling me home, Chicago.
No matter where you're from in America, Chicago is your hometown. Come home.
It's a feeling that calls me.
Ditka.
Chicago is calling me home.
Depression, one of the most common mental health problems in America. Nationwide, as much as 25% of the population will suffer from depression, some major form over the course of a lifetime. Yet less than $200 million are spent annually on its research, compared to more than $1 billion for cancer research. And depression affects more than 9 times as many people than cancer. Those are just some of the points, some of the statistics that will be brought out tonight at 7 o'clock here on WCCO television as we present an hour-long program we call Depression, Dark Night of the Soul. It will conclude our Project Mental Health. Joining us this afternoon is one of the project's producers, executive producers, Nancy Mate. Nancy, from the letters and the phone calls I've received since the beginning of this emphasis on mental health, I have decided or found out that mental health is indiscriminate. Depression is indiscriminate. It cuts across gender, age, sex, social, economic conditions. It doesn't point out people to, it just goes through everyone.
Yes, that seems to be true, Dave. It affects a large number of people. Right now, as many as 4 to 10% of the American public are affected by depression. That's as many as 15 million people at any one time.
And that includes children.
Yes. At any one time, 10% of children in the United States can be affected by depression before the age of 12. It's really startling.
One would think that this would be more prevalent with older people who, particularly people who are on limited incomes, begin to worry about their old age and about their subsistence, about the socioeconomic conditions.
Yes, they estimate that 25% of persons that are over 65 have some form of mental health problem, and a lot of them have depression as one of those problems.
How does a person know when he or she is depressed? If I'm depressed and it persists for over a week or 10 days, do I have what we know as depression?
Not necessarily. To really know that, you probably need a diagnosis by a professional, but there are ways that we are learning where you can help determine that for yourself. And one of the things that we are going to do in our program tonight is give out what is called a Zung self-assessment test. You can see a picture of it on your screen right now. It's in the TV guide and also in today's newspapers, both the Minneapolis and St. Paul papers. People can take that test, and this evening we'll discuss the range of results.
Is that, what else might we expect from tonight's program? This is an hour and a half, is that correct?
No, it's an hour program. It's at 7 o'clock, and it will be a live phone-in program, and we will be discussing depression, how to recognize it, and what to do about it if you feel that you have a depressed condition.
Generally, what have people written you? What have you heard from, is this one of the letters you've received?
Yes, one letter, this letter, the person wrote, "Those of us who have been through this experience find it wrenching. Some days you move forward 2 steps, only to be sliding back by 5 steps the next day. The roller coaster ride never seems to stop. It's like walking around with a steel blanket on all the time."
Does that generally describe the kinds of descriptions, the kinds of letters you've received from people?
Yes, just in general, people seem to be relieved that the subject is getting discussed. And they talk about for years not being able to talk about it, and the stigma that's been attached if it has affected them or their families.
You say they're going to have some source, some way to call in tonight to ask their questions?
Yes, there will be phones that they can call in to ask questions.
7 o'clock tonight, Dark Night of the Soul. Thanks, Nancy, very much. Good work. The Tuesday Five will continue in just a moment.
This is Big Ben, and this is the man who sets it. It's his job to keep this clock so accurate you could set your watch by it, as millions of Londoners do. The big question is, how does he check the accuracy of Big Ben? With the Citizen, the watch so accurate you could set a clock by it. Citizen watches, the smartest engineering ever strapped to a wrist.
It's off-the-wall deals time at your Toyota dealers. A new shipment of vehicles is headed for your Toyota dealer now. More cars, more trucks, more everything. And they're all listed on the showroom wall, and dealers are determined to sell them now before they arrive. So they're really willing to talk deals. Hurry in, make your best off-the-wall deal today, because once the vehicles arrive, off-the-wall deals time is over. Whoa! Make your off-the-wall deal now at your Toyota dealers. He's a good deal above the rest.
Spilled a cup of coffee, ruined a sweater. Boss is screaming, send this letter, call Emery, and it's as good as there. Emery's on the case, so you don't have to worry. We go any place and get it to you in a hurry. From the biggest to the smallest, it's as good as there, just call us.
Hi, Emery?
It's as good as there.
When the bell rings, school breaks.
When the bell rings, the fever breaks.
The fever breaks.
The fever for the flavor of a Pringle.
There's a golden rule when you break out of school. With a can of Pringles, you're a fan of Pringles.
It's a deep fried taste. It's a crispy crunch.
Now, I've got the fever for the flavor of a Pringles.
Love the deep fried taste of the crispy crunch. So break now for Pringles, you'll love the bunch.
You'll get the fever for the flavor of a Pringles. Wait till you taste Pringles now.
Dale Dobish, in 10 seconds. Tell us how things look up there.
All right, Dave, right now looking at the 694, 94, 494 area. You can see we're doing the bridge repair. No backup out here now, Dave. Pretty well cleaned up in the Woodbury area. The rest of the metro area is moving along quite well with the stalls and accidents being cleared up. So we're going to say goodnight. Join us again tomorrow.
Good work. Thanks, Neil. Colleen Needles at 6 will report on some bureaucratic red tape arguments that have sprung up after yesterday's propane gas leak in North Minneapolis. Also at 6, Caroline Lowe will report the story of a Korean infant in need of a second liver transplant in Minnesota. Those stories are part and parcel of our local and regional news roundup at 6. Now the CBS Evening News and Dan Rather.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening